Right now on Morning News Now, fallout over a controversial ruling by Arizona's Supreme Court that a near total ban on abortion dating back to the 1800s can be enforced.
It is a dark day in Arizona, and the near total Civil War era ban that continues to hang over our heads only serves to create more chaos for women and doctors in our state.
We have team coverage with more on the ruling, plus reaction and the potential impacts beyond state lines. Also this morning, war of words. President Biden criticizing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling his handling of the war with Hamas a mistake and renewing the call for a ceasefire in Gaza. This as the families of the Israeli hostages meet with the vice president at the White House. We will bring you the latest. Plus, more quality concerns for Boeing, this time over whistleblower claims made by a company engineer that another aircraft, the 787 Dreamliner, could potentially break apart while in the air. More on the allegations, plus Boeing's response and the investigation now underway. And the mania is real. The WWE calling WrestleMania 40 over the weekend the most successful event yet. How the two-day wrestling extravaganza is breaking records both in person and on the small screen and in the heart of our Joe Fryer.
Exactly. 145,000 people over 2 days. I guess, two of those people.
Yeah, I was just
on each night.
And you loved it.
It was exciting. Yeah, we'll give you a little update on it.
Can't wait to get into that.
Good to have you with us on this Wednesday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started with the fallout from that bombshell decision out of Arizona. Vice President Kamala Harris is set to head there this Friday after the state Supreme Court ruled that a near total abortion ban on the books, since before it was a state, is enforceable.
Under the long dormant 1864 law, abortion is banned from the moment of conception, and it's a felony. The law states that performing or assisting with one is punishable by imprisonment. An exception is carved out to save a mother's life, but not for rape or incest. The Arizona court is putting its ruling on hold now for 14 days. But already Arizona's Democratic Attorney General is vowing she will not enforce the law.
Let me be completely clear. As long as I am Attorney General of the state of Arizona, no woman or doctor will be prosecuted under this draconian law.
We have full team coverage of this landmark decision. In just a few moments, we're going to speak with NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos and NBC News correspondent Vander Hillard. But let's begin with NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. So, Yamiche, walk us through this decision. What should we know about it?
Well, this was, as you said, a really striking and bombshell decision by the Arizona State Supreme Court yesterday. They ruled that this law that dates back 160 years is enforceable, and it is a near total ban on abortion. It says that anybody who aids a woman in getting abortion could face up to 2 to 5 years in prison. It's also really important to note that this was a decision, a 4-2 decision, but all of the justices were appointed by Republicans. Now, as you said, the Democratic governor there in Arizona, Katie Hobbs, she's saying that there was that she signed an executive order in last year that it's still in effect that is going to prohibit anybody from being prosecuted for having an abortion or helping someone get an abortion. There's also the state attorney general who, before she was even elected, has said that she was not going to prosecute anybody for trying to get an abortion. But now that the state Supreme Court decision has been made, it's going to be very interesting because those decisions by the Democratic governor and Democratic AG, they might face now their own legal challenges. But for right now, this is stayed for 14 days while this all sort of takes effect in the next 2 weeks.
So exactly, the decision doesn't take effect for 14 days. Walk us through those next 14 days, what it means for women in Arizona right now, what we might see elected officials do before this does go into effect. What happens over these 2 weeks?
It's a critical question. Right now, currently, the law that was in effect before this ruling is in effect, and that's right now, abortions are banned in Arizona for up to 15 weeks of pregnancy. We should note that that law does not make exceptions for rape or incest. It also does allow abortions to be performed to save the life of a mother. That being said, it's still a felony charge to do an abortion after 15 weeks. And you talk about elected officials. It doesn't seem like there really is anything electorally that they can do, but there is a ballot initiative underway now. Abortion advocates who want to see more access to abortion, they say that they have enough signatures to put the question of whether or not there could be a constitutional amendment to enshrine abortion rights into the Arizona state constitution. They say they have enough signatures to put that on the ballot in November. If that passed, abortions would be available up until viability, which is about up until 14 weeks. It's still unclear whether or not that's going to actually be on the ballot. We have seen some legal challenges to those ballot initiatives, but we also have seen a number of cases where those ballot initiatives, including in really red states, those ballot initiatives have been successful in the past. Joe, Savannah.
That points to the fact, Amish, this is going to be a huge issue on the campaign trail this year. What is it we are hearing on the campaign trail, some of the reaction?
Well, it's very interesting. On the Democratic side, you have President Biden as well as Vice President Harris. They are really jumping on this and saying that this is really dangerous for women's health. They're also putting this squarely in the responsibility of former President Trump, saying that he did this, that this is really a complete consequence of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You're going to have the Vice President going on Friday to Arizona. I'll be traveling there as well to really talk about abortion access there. I imagine that the Vice President is going to do what she's done in a number of other cases, which is highlight personal stories of women who they believe lives were in danger because they were denied abortion access. So you're going to see the Vice President really going out on this and talking about this a lot. You're also, though, interestingly enough, we've seen former President Trump put out a statement earlier this week where he was saying that this issue should be left to the states. But you're also seeing Republicans now in the state of Arizona distancing themselves from this decision by the state Supreme Court, which is really interesting. Take, for example, someone like Carrie Lake. She's running for office again after losing the governorship race. Just 2 years ago, she was saying that this 1864 law, that it was good policy. Now, after the state ruling, she's saying she opposed it, that it's out of step with Arizona. And so you're even seeing Republicans now trying to say that this is the wrong ruling, that there shouldn't be total bans on abortion. So very interesting to watch that space.
All
Joe,
right.
Savannah.
Michelle Sindor, thank you so much.
Well, for more on this, we are joined by NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hillard and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas, both here in studio with us. Vaughn, you are a native of Arizona. Just tell us what you're hearing from people, how they're reacting there.
Right. This is the point in time, almost 2 years after Dobbs and the overturning of Roe v. Wade, in which the real human life stories from the abortion access coming to an end in places like Arizona are going to become more real, but also the political consequences here. In Arizona, exit polling from 2022 showed that 2/3 of Arizona voters wanted abortion rights, reproductive rights access. I want to let you listen to Lulu and Maya, two voters in Arizona that just last night were talking with our colleague out in Arizona, Alex Tabbitt. Take a listen.
It was a punch in the gut as a mother, as a sister, as a woman. Childbirth and bearing a child is not easy, and it comes with a lot of challenges. And I know that they say, oh, it's only, you know, if in the case of the mother's health, but who is to determine that?
I just feel like it should be out of the government's control. I feel like it's women's bodies, and they should be able to do whatever they want with their own bodies, and like no one should be able to control what I want to do.
This is visceral, this is real, and in real time we're talking about abortion providers looking at shutting their doors because of the potential consequences that could stem. We're talking about the territorial ban that would call for the imprisonment of 2 to 5 years for abortion providers. So the stakes are high in the state right now.
So, Danny, this decision on hold for 14 days, essentially. Help us understand the timeline here.
Yeah, the case will go back to the trial court on remand to consider other constitutional challenges unrelated to Dobbs and Roe and the constitutional challenges that were already decided by the Arizona Supreme Court in this case. And then because of a parallel case that's currently pending, really technically providers will be able to provide abortions, it appears, up to and including May. So a short reprieve, but not a very long one at all.
Vaughn, we've heard from the Democratic governor of the state who said this has to be repealed. We also heard from the state attorney general who said she's not going to enforce it. Does that mean that this is moot? Do those comments, do those opinions have any power here?
Right. It's a really good question here. Both of those individuals are Democrats. The governor signed an executive order just last year saying that the attorney general would be the one in charge of prosecuting all the abortion cases here. Now, there's questions over whether the county attorneys in the state, there's 15 of them, whether they could potentially challenge the authority of the attorney general to actually force her hand through the court system to actually go and prosecute these abortion cases.
Yeah, talking about the Attorney General, Vaughn brings up a really good point, and it's this. A lot of times when there's a law that maybe an elected Attorney General or appointed Attorney General thinks isn't a good one, they'll say, hey, we're not going to enforce it. And a great example is marijuana legislation. Marijuana is still federally illegal, and the federal government's taken an approach of, well, we're just not going to pay attention to it. That is not a permanent fix. It's a problematic fix because it leads to selective enforcement. It leads to a problem where you have laws that are extant on the books, and the enforcers of that law, the Attorney General, is just saying, hey, I won't do it. What's to say that the next Attorney General won't enforce it completely? What's to say that a county prosecuting attorney might decide, I'm not going to listen to the AG, I'm going to enforce this law? So that is a temporary fix. It is not a permanent fix.
What could be a permanent fix is if voters decide to enshrine abortion rights into their rules there. Where does that, how likely are we going to see this on the ballot in November?
Just last week, multiple organizations, including Planned Parenthood of Arizona, said that they had collected more than 500,000 signatures of Arizona voters to put on this November's ballot a constitutional amendment that would codify abortion protections up to 24 weeks here. So we're looking at 7 months from now, the general election, this coming down to Arizona voters. Politics is not just all campaign who wins, who loses. It comes down to policy. And this referendum state measure is going to be significant. And it's also going to be a message to other states where they're trying to also get these sort of similar ballot measures and sending a clear message that this is what Arizona voters want.
All right. Vaughn Hillard, Danny Savalas, thank you both very much.
President Biden is stepping up his public criticism of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of the war with Hamas.
Yeah, in an interview with Univision, the president said Netanyahu is making a mistake. Here's more of what Mr. Biden had to say.
What I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country. I've spoken with everyone from the Saudis to the Jordanians to the Egyptians. They're prepared to move in. They're prepared to move this food in. And I think there's no excuse to not provide for the medical and the food needs of those people. They should be done now.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris met with families of the hostages at the White House yesterday, 6 months into the conflict. Hamas continues to weigh Israel's latest ceasefire proposal, despite Hamas leaders saying Israel did not meet their most crucial demands for releasing more hostages.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now with the latest on all this. Gabe, good morning. So let's start with that meeting between the families of hostages and Vice President Harris at the White House. What more are we learning about how that played out? What are the families saying about it?
Hey there, Joe and Savannah. Good morning. Well, the White House says that Vice President Harris made it clear to these families that there is no higher priority for the Biden administration than securing the release of their loved ones. But the hostage family, while they called the meeting productive, they're really calling for action at this point. Listen.
There are 133 cherished souls who are being held there, and it is time. We don't want any more progress. We want results. And we are so grateful and thankful to the American administration and Congress for all of the support. But we need results. We need our people home.
There is a deal on the table right now that all of the parties agree to and are willing to work with. We are waiting now, and the world waits for Hamas to get to yes.
And regarding that deal that was just mentioned, over the weekend, CIA Director William Burns was in Cairo for hostage negotiations. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says that those negotiations lasted late into the night, with Egypt and Qatar communicating directly with Hamas. But as those hostage families said, they believe the ball right now is in Hamas's court. Guys.
So, Gabe, there's this growing frustration among Americans over the lack of any, material change from the White House in its support of Israel's approach in Gaza. So we're hearing this criticism from the president, from the administration, but then the U.S. is still supplying weapons to the Israelis. Explain the White House's strategy here, towing that line and the pressure, that the president is facing from Congress.
Well, Savannah, a couple points here. One, the U.S. continues to believe that Israel has the right to defend itself. But regarding those weapons that were signed off on recently, the White House continues to reiterate that those weapons were in the pipeline for months, even years, and were unrelated to the current conflict. But yes, as you said, some Democrats now on Capitol Hill are pushing back strongly, and they now say that military aid to Israel should be conditioned, especially after that deadly attack on that humanitarian aid convoy last week that killed several humanitarian aid workers from World Central Kitchen.
You know, Gabe, Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be doubling down on his ground operation in Rafah. He says no force in the world could stop an Israeli operation on the city. Does this seem to be a rebuke of the White House?
Well, Joe, look, for the past several months, we've been seeing just increased tensions between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden. You just heard those new comments overnight in that new interview with Univision. But this also was apparent last week in that phone call between the Prime Minister and the President, where President Biden took a harsher tone than he had before. And it really came after that attack on those humanitarian aid workers last week. There seems to be a distinct shift in what we're hearing from the White House when it comes to Israel. Again, they're still stressing that they are steadfast in their support for Israel, but certainly pushing back even more strongly on that planned military operation in Rafah. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. Gabe, thank you.
Thanks, Gabe. Well, James and Jennifer Crumbley, the first parents to ever be charged and convicted in their child's mass school shooting, were both sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. In what was an emotional day in a Michigan courtroom, they faced the families of the victims in the Oxford High School shooting. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the details.
America's first parents convicted for their child's mass school shooting, each getting the maximum sentence.
It is the sentence of this court that you serve 10 to 15 years.
Jennifer and James Crumbley in prison jumpsuits, appearing stoic as their sentences were read. Earlier this year, both were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter related to the 2021 Oxford High School massacre carried out by their son.
This tragedy has taken an incredible toll on our family.
Families of the four students killed emotionally addressing the court, including Madison Baldwin's mom.
While your son was hearing voices and asking for help, I was helping Madison pick out her senior classes. While you were purchasing a gun for your son and leaving it unlocked, I was helping her finish her college essays.
At times, loved ones speaking directly to the shooter's parents.
You failed as parents. The punishment that you face will never be enough.
Instead of acknowledging any mistakes, they continue to show no remorse.
Hannah St. Juliana's sister, Raina, calling out the testimony Jennifer Crumbley gave during her trial, saying she wouldn't have done anything differently.
You wouldn't do anything different. I cannot fathom that.
Crumbley clarifying that comment.
I didn't have a reason to do anything different. This was not something I foresaw. With the benefit of hindsight and information I have now, my answer would be drastically different.
Meanwhile, James Crumbley speaking publicly for the first time.
I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did.
Prosecutors pushing back on the idea that this case sets a sweeping precedent.
There's a difference between precedent setting and rare. And this is really a rare set of facts.
The families say a maximum sentence can't bring back their children.
Maximum sentence enough? It's not. I'm serving a life sentence.
Our thanks to Maggie Vespa for that reporting. Jennifer Crumbley's attorney says she will appeal the sentence. The Michigan Department of Corrections confirms to NBC News that the Crumbley parents and their son will be housed in separate prisons.
Time now for weather, where the threat of flooding and severe storms continues across the South this morning.
Angie Lastman is in studio with us with your weather. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys. Quite an active one across parts of the Gulf Coast. We've got tornado watches that are in effect for a good chunk of this region, from Texas all the way into portions of Mississippi. Those are going to last for another couple of hours hours as this really strong line of thunderstorms works its way to the east. No surprise if we have some flooding in that region as well as some of those stronger storms developing through the day today. Here's the flood watches right now. 13 million people included in that. What you see right here, that shaded red, that's a flash flood warning. So really incredible rainfall rates happening in that region on top of the strong storms that we're seeing moving through. The threat for severe weather is going to last through the morning hours, into the afternoon hours, potentially even into the evening hours. And we've got a big chunk of this area also included in this. 13 million people, goes from New Orleans up to Nashville. But the best chance for us to see some of those stronger tornadoes, it's going to be centered from the panhandle of Florida out towards portions of southwestern Louisiana. We've got places like Biloxi, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, all included in that, along with Pensacola, as we look for the potential for those stronger tornadoes, rather, to develop as the day goes on. If you're looking ahead to tomorrow, this storm system will work its way to the north and east, and we're not done with the impacts just yet. We'll still be looking at those to be a potential here as we get into tomorrow, but they'll be a little less than what they are today. Either way, some really heavy rain across parts of the Ohio Valley into parts of the Great Lakes. We'll see that impacting folks across the New England region as well, and down through the Mid-Atlantic, we'll see some of that rain. By the time this is all said and done, maybe 1 to 3 inches of rain will be the more widespread amounts, especially across parts of the southeast. That's where we're most concerned for flooding, especially today. As we look ahead to the day tomorrow, 25 million people at risk for severe weather. Notice we're dropping down those tornado potential impacts. We'll still have the chance to see maybe a few of those, but it's not quite as large of an area, and we're not looking for the severe weather to be quite as intense tomorrow. But we do have places like Cincinnati to Pittsburgh and Savannah to Tampa included in the chance for some of those stronger wind gusts. The hail does look to be a lower threat, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that even after we get through today and into tomorrow. Meanwhile, really warm temperatures, guys. We've got temperatures in the mid-70s in Washington, D.C. today. We're running almost 10 degrees above normal in Detroit with a high of just 66 degrees. And Des Moines will hit 73 degrees. So some wild weather along the Gulf Coast, a day that folks need to have a way to get those warnings.
All right, Angie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There's a lot more to come this morning on Morning News Now. Later this hour, more legal fallout for Alec Baldwin over that deadly shooting on the Rust movie set. The new document just filed by prosecutors.
Up first, a teenager accused by the FBI of plotting a series of attacks on churches. How a text message led to his arrest. Next. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're learning new details of an alleged plot that the FBI says was being planned by an Idaho teenager who's now in custody. The Bureau says the 18-year-old was an ISIS sympathizer and was planning to launch deadly attacks on churches. We get the details from NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney.
Prosecutors say this is the suspect, 18-year-old Alexander Mercurio, posing in front of an ISIS flag. According to the criminal complaint, he allegedly told associates he had spent months formulating a plan to attack churches and kill parishioners in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The FBI arresting him the day before they say he planned to carry it out. Mercurio allegedly wrote in a text message he would walk into a church, start beating people, and then kill them with his knives and machete, saying he would burn down the building. He said he would keep going until police killed him. That message allegedly sent last week to a confidential FBI informant. During his arrest, the FBI seizing knives, a machete, and butane. Intelligence officials have been warning about the risk that disaffected Americans could become lone wolf attackers, especially after the Hamas terror attack and ensuing war in Gaza.
The ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans inside the United States to a whole nother level. The potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland is now increasingly concerning.
Mercurio's alleged plot has echoes of the recent deadly ISIS-K attack on a Moscow concert hall. Court records describe Mercurio as a disillusioned teenager radicalized with ISIS propaganda during pandemic school lockdowns. A U.S. intelligence bulletin issued Friday warns of an elevated risk of ISIS-inspired attacks on sports stadiums, concert venues, and churches here in the U.S.
All right, Ken, thank you. International headlines now starting in Italy, where an explosion at a decades-old hydroelectric plant has killed at least 3 people.
NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Joe Savannah, good morning. That's right. Italian authorities are saying that at least 3 workers were killed, 5 others were injured, and 4 more are still missing after an explosion at a hydroelectric power plant in the north of Italy. Now, the blast occurred on Tuesday in a plant built on a lake near the city of Bologna. The city's prefect said that the fire broke out during maintenance work when a turbine exploded on the 8th floor, 100 feet below the surface, and became flooded. The city's prosecutors said an investigation will be launched once the plant is safe and the missing people are found. Let's go to Ecuador now, where a security camera video shows the moments when last Friday, Ecuadorian police broke into Mexico's embassy to carry out Ecuador's former vice president who took refuge there in December. The video released by Mexican authorities show Ecuadorian policemen as they scale the embassy walls and break into the building. They are then seen pushing a Mexican diplomat to the ground before they carry out Ecuador's ex-vice president Jorge Glass, a convicted criminal and fugitive. Now, Mexico's president Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the video showed the authoritarian and vile way Ecuadorian police had raided the embassy. And let's end this tour of the world in Taiwan, where a Labrador retriever who helped rescuers locate stranded people and bodies under the rubble after last week's 7.4 magnitude earthquake became a bit of a star in the country. Roger, who is 8 years old, is one of several dogs used in the search and rescue operation. But what made him stand out is the fact that in the past he failed to become a drug-sniffing dog because he was overly friendly and playful. He is now Taiwan's most famous rescue dog and proof that there is always a second chance in life and in a career, of course. Back to you guys.
You can never be too nice and too playful.
Don't you just love a dog with a job? I love it. Oh my God, so cute. Claudio, thank you.
Coming up, new claims about Boeing's 787 Dreamliner causing a nightmare for both the company and passengers alike.
When we come back, the investigation just launched over allegations the plane could break apart mid-air. Stay with us. You are watching Morning News Now.
We're back now with new safety concerns about another Boeing aircraft. There are new whistleblower allegations about the safety of the 787 Dreamliner, a plane that has been in service for more than a decade. As NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello explains, both the FAA and Congress are now investigating.
Already under unprecedented scrutiny, Boeing is facing new allegations. The FAA tells NBC News it's investigating new whistleblower claims, first disclosed by the New York Times, made by a Boeing quality engineer who warns the 787 Dreamliner's fuselage was improperly fastened together. In a letter to the FAA, his attorney writes it is likely to cause premature fatigue failure over time in 2 major airplane joints. That could cause the plane to break apart after many thousands of flights.
He is alleging that Boeing knowingly took a series of manufacturing shortcuts in the construction of the 787.
But Boeing strongly objects, insisting the 787 is very safe and has undergone intense stress testing, saying these claims about the structural integrity of the 787 are inaccurate and do not represent the comprehensive work Boeing has done to ensure the quality and long-term safety of the aircraft. Still, the new claims come after 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes overseas and the MAX 9 door plug blowout in January, all to be the subject of congressional hearings next week.
Boeing is putting profits and production speed ahead of quality and safety.
The 787 fuselage is made of a lightweight composite material to make it stronger than aluminum with better fuel economy. Boeing and 3 different providers make the components that join together in the final assembly. The FAA has already approved Boeing's plan to tighten paper-thin gaps between those sections, which the engineer claims are vulnerable. Boeing insists they are stress-tested and safe. The plane, it says, should fly for decades. The new whistleblower worked at the same South Carolina Boeing plant where another whistleblower worked, John Barnett, who took his own life last month. Before these new allegations, the FAA chief told Lester last month Boeing's quality control remains under intense FAA oversight and inspection.
I will make sure that we're not approving any aircraft into the system that are not safely built.
Our thanks to Tom Costello for that report. Boeing says it stands by the aircraft and that the 787 should fly about 40 to 50 years if the plane is properly maintained. There are now 1,100 of them in service worldwide. The company further disputes these claims that the whistleblower did not have access to all the testing data.
For more on what we can expect in the Boeing investigations on Capitol Hill, let's bring in NBC News Congressional Correspondent Julie Cirin. Julie, great to see you. So as we just heard there in Tom's piece, the whistleblower is set to testify next week. This is before a Senate subcommittee. And this is really over what they're calling Boeing's broken safety culture. It comes after Senators Richard Blumenthal and Ron Johnson wrote this letter to the outgoing Boeing CEO. We remember there were all those leadership changes, calling on him to explain why Americans should feel confident in Boeing. What information is the committee hoping to learn here?
Well, look, this is a subcommittee led by Senator Richard Blumenthal and Senator Ron Johnson, and they are going to bring in that whistleblower, Sam Salapour, who is a decade veteran with Boeing. He's an engineer. He has wrote to the FAA. He has raised concerns that he saw, as you heard Tom lay out in his piece there, about essentially planes being stitched together with different kinds of pieces. And he said this could make the aircraft vulnerable. He's reported those safety concerns. He said he's been retaliated against a supervisor when he raised these concerns internally. The FAA has had this for some time, guys, since January. And it's my understanding that the committee is now in possession of everything the whistleblower has laid out. So certainly they're going to have him there raising these concerns, trying to elevate this so that the public knows more of what's happening on these airplanes that they're flying on.
Julie, Senators Blumenthal and Johnson also sent a separate letter to the FAA asking for more information on the whistleblower's disclosures and on Boeing aircraft safety. This all became public yesterday in the New York Times. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that letter that they sent, guys, was from last month. They finally received everything they were looking for by yesterday. Of course, they wanted this in time for the whistleblower to come and testify before their panel next week. They're looking for all the information that the FAA has, not only in the months that they've been investigating this themselves, but also all of the letters and documents they received from Salapour, that engineer, and his lawyers in January in that original complaint and in the subsequent letters and documents that Salapour has provided the FAA with afterwards. And look, this is obviously a really big moment for Boeing. It's been in the spotlight for several months. There were various safety concerns, doors flying off mid-flight back in January, other items that, of course, the committee, this isn't the first time they've scrutinized Boeing. They've had the previous CEO, for example, in the hot seat in prior years, and this is something I expect will continue.
And Julie, so what's next in terms of congressional action specifically after this hearing? What could come out of this?
Well, like I said, they've been investigating this matter for several years. There have been various pieces of legislation that have been offered and approved by the House and Senate in recent years. One key date to keep in mind is in May, when Congress needs to reauthorize the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Certainly the way that these aircrafts are inspected, the safety features of them, are something that oversight authorities in Congress are going to be focusing on and scrutinizing. I anticipate when it comes to the Boeing issue specifically, next week's hearing with the whistleblower will not be the last. As you mentioned, they also wrote to the outgoing CEO of Boeing asking him to potentially testify in front of the committee as well. So we'll see what happens there.
All right, Julie Cirin, thank you very much.
There are new developments in the Rust movie set shooting. In court documents filed Friday, prosecutors allege that actor Alec Baldwin, quote, lost control of his emotions on set and made the production unsafe. Now, the filing came in response to Baldwin's efforts to have the involuntary manslaughter charge against him dropped. Here's NBC News correspondent Elwin Lopez with the details.
In this footage from the film Rust, Alec Baldwin firing prop guns in the New Mexico desert. The scenes, exclusively obtained by NBC, just a portion of more footage turned over to special prosecutors that NBC has not reviewed.
Everyone doesn't need to be right here, like in the path of the gun. Could you please move?
Those prosecutors in a new filing slamming Baldwin, saying the actor had, quote, absolutely no control of his emotions and contributed to, quote, safety compromises on set. Just days after that footage was captured, a prop gun in Baldwin's hand would discharge with a real bullet in the chamber that was never supposed to be there, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins and wounding another. The film's young armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed now awaiting sentencing after she was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter last month. Prosecutors charging Baldwin with involuntary manslaughter. The actor's team filing a motion to throw out the indictment. The state responding by slamming Baldwin, saying, quote, the combination of Hannah Gutierrez's negligence and inexperience and Alec Baldwin's complete lack of concern for the safety of those around him would prove deadly for Helena Hutchins. Both parties in their case filings raised issues with information that had been shared with the media, including NBC News. We reached out to Baldwin but have not heard back. Baldwin had previously said he was told the gun he was handed was cold, meaning without live ammunition.
One more. I forgot the recoil stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go.
Prosecutors claim Baldwin relentlessly rushed the crew and Gutierrez Reed to work faster, alleging that his actions further compromised safety. But some footage also showing Baldwin apparently halting takes over safety concerns.
I don't know why you're going up hills and all this other. You're going to break your neck. Yeah. So I want you to lead him on the nicest path.
I was, but I was.
No. I want you to go on the nicest path.
Prosecutors also saying Baldwin and his attorneys spread misleading information in the aftermath of the shooting, like in this interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
The prosecutors filing calling this claim absurd, citing a year-long investigation by law enforcement.
No!
Now with Baldwin's trial set for July, all eyes on how these allegations will play out in court.
Our thanks to Elwin Lopez for that report. Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer for Rust, is set to be sentenced on Monday. She faces up to 18 months in prison.
All right, coming up, are you feeling angry? Maybe you could try shredding the feelings away.
When we come back, we're going to break down the research that shows writing down your thoughts, then putting them through the shredder would be the best way to cool off. Our weekly checkup is next on Morning News. Back now with our weekly medical checkup, and this morning we're taking a closer look at how incentivizing exercise can lead to increases in activity.
It sounds like the way that you train a dog, so I can't wait to learn about
Here's
this.
a snack.
Plus, we're studying the science of happiness with 7 happiness hacks that could help you maintain a positive attitude.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. John Torres is here to discuss these health headlines and more. All right, so let's start with the incentives. Here you go.
It's not a whole lot different.
Run a mile, then you get a treat.
Exactly. It is a study from the National Institutes of Health that basically says incentives are basically like reminders, could maybe help you get more active. Is that right?
Exactly. What they did is they took people, they gave them fitness watches, and every day they gave them how many steps they took that day. They divided them into groups. One group, they did nothing. No reminders, no incentives, nothing. The other groups, they either gave them reminders or incentives. Reminders being, hey, work out a little bit more. You need to put some more steps in there. Incentives being either financial incentives or game type incentives, meaning, hey, you'll get to the next level of this game we've made up if you do these certain amount of steps. And they found out that those that did the incentives and the rewards, particularly if they did both together, they ended up getting 1,500 more steps a day. They ended up getting 40 more minutes of workout a week. And so they really ended up pushing more on their workouts because of those rewards or incentives. So what does that mean for the rest of us? Well, what kind of doctor's orders do we have out there?
Someone to pay you.
Besides a little treat. Just set daily workout reminders, because reminders do help. And try to make games out of incentivizing yourself, your friends, your family maybe. Maybe little games, little rewards. If we all do something together, we can get some, we can watch a movie or we can go on a trip or something. And that can certainly help out.
It's hard if you do it to yourself. Like, you didn't work out, but you can still have the cookie. Dr. Torres, let's talk about this shredding one. We teased this a moment ago. This is so interesting. So this is researchers out of Japan are suggesting, maybe if you're upset about something, you write it down and then you put it through a shredder and it's going to do something beneficial.
And I absolutely love the way they did the study, because they took students, of course, who else to study on but students. They had them write a report. These are college students. And in the report, they purposefully gave them bad grades, and they put things in there like, I can't believe somebody intelligent would write something like this. Personal insults. And people got angry, and so they said, let's do 2 different things. One is write down what you're angry about and just file it away. The other one is either shred it or throw it away, crumple it up and throw it away. And they found out that when people shredded it, crumpled it up and threw it away, they ended up getting back to their baseline emotions. In other words, they weren't angry anymore. And so just that act of doing that, putting it on there, it's actually called backward magical contagion, meaning that you're putting basically your anger onto that paper, throwing it away or shredding it, and it kind of gets rid of it.
Wait, say it again.
Backward magical contagion.
Magical. I like that.
I bet those file folders were scary. Just open it up and you're like, that's what I was mad about yesterday.
Just shred it. Get rid of that thing.
It's less messy than throwing in the fire, too.
Exactly.
All the cleanup you have to do after that. Okay, finally, The secret to happiness has apparently been discovered. The University of Bristol in the UK. What did they find out?
So they actually did a study, again, on university students, and students that had taken essentially a happiness course a year or two before, and they looked at them to say, okay, how many are still happy and how many aren't necessarily happy because of that course? How many went back to baseline? And they found out that 51% of them had stayed happy a year or two later, and they stayed happy by using these 7 steps they have here. Acts of kindness, social connections, you're savoring your experiences, you're focusing on positive events, you're practicing gratitude, physical activity is super important, and then meditation and mindfulness. So what does this mean? What are your doctor's orders for this? Well, try once a day to look at these habits and go ahead and do these habits, and it can really help you get to that happiness level again, get back to that, especially if you're not feeling very happy. And this may also work if you just do it periodically. We try to get you to do it every day, but if not, work periodically. And I thought the researcher in this made a good statement. At the end of it, he said, what this is showing us is that happiness is a decision. Yeah. And so decide to be happy, and that'll hopefully get you over to being happy.
There are things that can help you do that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe you could email us those. We can start thinking about them every day.
We won't throw them in the shredder.
Yeah.
And remember, if you're angry, shred them.
Dr. Torres, as always, thank you so much.
Bet.
Thank you. Good to have you. Well, if you're still having trouble, though, getting those workouts, and maybe you're feeling intimidated by the thought of going to the gym, well, there is a growing trend on TikTok that might be right up your alley. Creators are making cardio a lot cozier. NBC News Daily anchor Zincle Esamoah explains.
Whether your workout includes strength training, cardio, or high-intensity intervals, it can also be cozy.
Now let's do some cozy cardio.
Today, fitness fiends are reinventing workouts with a new trend. Here's how it works. You grab your favorite cozy loungewear, you want to set the mood, grab a drink, beverage, and then put on your favorite TV show or podcast and get started with your low-impact movement. It's a practice Megan Roop, now in her 30s and a mother of 2, has leaned heavily on for her postpartum recovery.
You are not new to fitness, but when did cozy cardio get on your radar?
I saw this trend happen on TikTok, and it really resonated with me, especially in that postpartum phase that I was in. It just felt like less of a hurdle to get dressed. I was already in my pajamas. I was already in my sweats.
Roop has always been active. Once a professional dancer and fitness instructor, she says she worked to deal with her views of body image in her 20s. But when she got pregnant,
a lot of those feelings came up for me again.
How were you dealing and feeling?
I struggled in pregnancy and postpartum with all the changes, and someone who's super active, I'm not able to do everything I used to do.
This new kind of workout was a welcome reframe.
For it, and you're ready to go. Lighting a candle, having my warm cup of coffee, standing by, music that I enjoy with my workout. Those are things that just create an atmosphere and an environment that I look forward to. I always say, too, that the movement also needs to be something that resonates with you, right? We can feel when we're enjoying a movement or not. On a treadmill, counting every calorie as I ran in my early 20s, my body could tell I didn't enjoy that.
The term was popularized by health and wellness creator Hope Zucker-Brown.
I really want cozy cardio to be a movement where people can reclaim their relationships with exercise. Let's do some cozy cardio before work.
The trend encouraging people to view fitness as a joyful experience.
It was meant for you to just enjoy yourself, to take a little bit of time to do the things that feel good for you.
The trend comes as mounting research finds being sedentary increases your risk of illness, including dementia, cancer, and heart disease.
Cozy cardio is a great way for people to kind of get started with exercise. Cozy cardio is not always a high enough intensity to actually meet our physical activity guidelines.
The Center for Disease Control currently recommends 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week, with at least 2 days of strength training. For Megan Roop, this new trend has revolutionized her ongoing fitness work.
People are so compelled to this cozy form of working out.
It's just removing that barrier to entry, right? So if you can roll out of bed, be in your sweats, be in something comfortable, it feels like you can show up to it. Yeah, I can do that. It doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Okay, I actually want to try that. I've been thinking about getting one of those walking pads. Zincle, thank you so much.
Let's get to some financial headlines now. Apple says India is a rising star when it comes to manufacturing iPhones.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with more on that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Good morning, Joe. Yes, so
Apple has manufactured $14 billion worth of iPhones in India so far this fiscal year. Bloomberg reports Apple is now making 14%, or about 1 in every 7 iPhones in the country, and Apple is looking to diversify its supply chain away from China with geopolitical tensions rising between Washington and Beijing, even as China remains the world's largest iPhone manufacturer. Apple may also be taking its talents to South Beach. Bloomberg says the company is expanding its presence in the Miami area following similar moves by other tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft. Apple is taking up 45,000 square feet in a new building in Coral Gables and is expected to open a large new retail location in Miami. South Florida has attracted the ultra-wealthy and companies since the pandemic, with many firms moving there or outright expanding their footprint. And get this, Mattel is launching a new version of Scrabble designed to be more accessible to those who might find the legendary word game intimidating. The new double-sided board will still feature the original Scrabble game. The flip side will include helper cards, use a simpler scoring system, and be quicker to play. Scrabble Together will also allow you to compete in teams, and it is the first time in Scrabble's 75-year history that it's made such a major change, guys.
I don't know.
And no Q's and Z's.
Yeah. That's like, I think it's either you do Scrabble or you play another game.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Exactly. I agree.
Scrabble.
Maybe it'll get people in.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's good. Savannah, thank you.
Coming up, putting the mania in WrestleMania.
That's right, the WWE breaking tables and records with WrestleMania 40 this past weekend. More on wrestling's exploding audience. That's next here on Morning News Now. Welcome back. The winningest coach in college basketball history is retiring. We've talked about Coach Tara Vander a lot on this show, and for good reason. Just listen to some of these stats. Across her more than 4-decade-long career, she's got over 1,200 wins under her belt. She also spent 38 seasons heading up the Stanford women's basketball team, ultimately leading them to 3 NCAA championship titles. If that's not enough, she even won a gold medal with the U.S. Olympic basketball team back in 1996. Vander said in a statement that she has loved basketball since she was a little girl, and after a legendary career of both shattering records and glass ceilings, she will make her grand exit on May 9th, which also happens to be the 39th anniversary of when she was originally hired. She will certainly be missed. How incredible are those stats?
A total legend. And she's like, not going to wait till 40. She's like, nope, I'm good. 39. I've done it all.
She deserves it.
Very cool. All right, thanks, Savannah. All right.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the growing fallout from a stunning court ruling that could drastically impact Arizonans' right to choose. The state's highest court ruling that a 160-year-old near total ban on abortion still applies in 2024. But is the decision proving to be a step too far for even the most conservative Arizona Republicans? More on the ruling and the searing White House response as the Biden campaign looks to drum up support in a key battleground state. States of emergency. We're tracking some wild weather that's battering much of the South this morning. Millions across Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana are waking up to the threat of tornadoes. The severe storms, heavy winds, and hail tear up towns on the Gulf Coast. Tens of thousands are without power, and Mother Nature is not letting up. Our Angie Lastman has your full forecast. Also this morning, no, it's not just you. That pesky spring allergy season is ramping up and getting longer. We're going to dig into why and how you can keep yourself healthy and sane as temps climb. Plus, the clever new feature that one popular rideshare app is rolling out this morning, working to make its rides safer. Savannah is going to bring us that story later on in the hour. This is something that's going to interest a lot of our viewers out there who use these apps.
Yeah, definitely. They said it was, they'd heard feedback like this from all riders, but certainly developed with women in mind. So we'll tell you about some of those features in a little bit.
Looking forward to that. Let's begin with the new fallout this morning over the Arizona Supreme Court's controversial abortion ruling. It centers on a law that dates back to 1860. 1864. That's before Arizona even became a state. The ruling criminalizes nearly all abortions except when a woman's life is at risk.
The decision is sparking a call to action among abortion rights advocates, and it's keeping the issue front and center in the race for the White House, with Vice President Kamala Harris scheduled to make a campaign stop in the state on Friday. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has the latest.
Hey there, good morning. And this morning we are seeing the political shockwaves after the state court reinstated that law first put in place the year Abraham Lincoln was reelected. All of it highlighting just how critical the issue of abortion access will be come November. New fallout this morning over a bombshell ruling in Arizona that puts in place one of the country's strictest anti-abortion laws. Overnight, the Democratic governor furious.
The devastating impact of this ban that it will have on health care for women across the state is just unconscionable.
The state Supreme Court's decision reinstating a law put in place more than a century ago, 1864, before Arizona was even a state. It makes no exceptions for rape or incest, only for the life of the mother. Once the law goes into effect, which could be in the next couple of months, doctors could face prison time up to 5 years for performing the procedure.
Our state legislature and our judges in our state feel that people in the year 2024 want to go back to 1864, when slavery was legal and women didn't have the right to vote for 50 years.
The state's attorney general says she has no intention of enforcing the law.
No woman or doctor will be prosecuted under this draconian law.
Anti-abortion advocates celebrating the ruling as a win. But President Biden calling it cruel and posting a photo of former President Trump with the caption, "Trump did this," a nod to the Supreme Court's 2022 decision overturning Roe v. Wade, a decision that for decades overruled state laws like the one in Arizona. Mr. Trump, who's taken credit for the Supreme Court's decision.
I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade.
Mr. Trump also alluding to the realities at the ballot box since Roe was overturned, saying Republicans should avoid losing elections on an issue that should be decided by the states, in his view, a position he made clear in a video earlier this week and reiterated through his campaign in a statement on the Arizona decision, saying these are decisions for people of each state to make.
Whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
Already, some Arizona Republicans distancing themselves from this state ruling, including Senate candidate Kari Lake, locked in one of the most high-profile races in the country. Just 2 years ago, she endorsed the 1864 law.
That we have a great law on the books right now. If that happens, we will be a state where we will not be taking the lives of our unborn anymore.
Now, she says she opposes it, as does her Democratic challenger.
We will have our say, and we will fight.
So let's talk more about that fight. Abortion rights supporters say they're confident that they will have enough signatures to get a ballot initiative on the ballot in Arizona in the fall to protect abortion access. And it is not just Arizona. It's expected that in at least 10 other states, that issue is likely to be on the ballot come November. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you.
Kimberly Metson joins us now. She is a professor of law at Rutgers Law School. Kimberly, good morning. Thank you very much for being with us. So this decision is on hold now for 14 days. So a lower court can hear these additional arguments about the law's constitutionality. So tell us what happens in these 2 weeks.
Well, there's going to be a lot of scrambling, obviously, to figure out, if you're a person who runs a clinic, what's supposed to happen in 14 days. There will be people who are making plans for abortions who may have to decide to go out of state in order to do that. And then, quite frankly, there should be a lot of conversation going on among people in the legislature to figure out what their next move is going to be.
So right now, what does this mean for women in Arizona?
So right now we're sort of in status quo, right? So because there's been this stay for 14 days, there won't be any enforcement of that very old ban that was still sitting on the books. So that means that essentially abortion is still legal in the state of Arizona, and that abortions can be provided under other statutes that are in place in Arizona. So for right now, it doesn't mean much of anything, but of course it has created this huge scramble to figure out what comes next.
So, Professor, as we've seen this start to happen piecemeal across the country, something that is also kind of this rolling wave here is these measures actually being placed on the ballot. In some states, that'll be coming up in November, with the voters having the choice to enshrine abortion protections. Are there any other avenues that could be used to counter the ruling, or will it really come down to, if this ends up on a ballot, what voters choose?
Well, you could imagine that there might still be more litigation that happens. The Supreme Court sort of said, let's throw this back to the states and allow the states to decide the issue. And what that means is, we're now living in an era where there's litigation all over the country around abortion. So obviously you can still continue to sue. The legislature can step in and decide, what's the right way to go in Arizona. Do we keep the 15-week ban? Or do we go back to the 1860s, which doesn't seem like something that's going to be very popular with much of anybody at this point? Or you can, again, sort of wait to see what happens in the fall, right? If there's a change with this ballot initiative, then that's going to supersede whatever decisions are being made by the courts.
So, Professor, in the interim, Arizona's Attorney General says she has no intention of enforcing the law. Could anyone force her to enforce it, or ultimately is it just up to the county prosecutors at that level?
At this point, it would really just be up to the county prosecutors. And as far as I can tell, a number of them have also said that they will not be prosecuting abortion-related crimes, won't prosecute women who get abortions, nor will they prosecute people who are actually performing abortions. So, laws don't enforce themselves. They have to be enforced by prosecutors. So if you have prosecutors who are saying this is not a law that we are willing to enforce, then it sits on the books and it doesn't really have impact.
Professor Kimberly Metson, important information. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Turning to Michigan, where a judge gave the maximum sentence to the Crumbleys, the first parents in U.S. history charged and convicted for a school shooting committed by their child. Jennifer and James Crumbley were each given 10 to 15 years in prison after family members of some of the victims made emotional statements in court. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has been following this case from the beginning. Joined us from the courthouse in Pontiac, Michigan. Maggie, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, James and Jennifer Crumbley inside that courthouse just yesterday made one final plea, offering condolences, attempting to show remorse, but the victims' families didn't buy it. And it appeared the judge wasn't swayed either, telling them that the punishment for their role in their son's mass shooting needs to serve as a deterrent to the public.
You failed as parents. The punishment that you face will never be enough.
This morning, an American first with a maximum sentence.
It is the sentence of this court that you serve 10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years behind bars for both James and Jennifer Crumbley, each convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the 2021 Oxford High School shooting carried out by their then 15-year-old son, Ethan, who's serving a life sentence. The families who lost loved ones speaking in court.
The blood of our children is on your hands, too.
The judge Tuesday admonishing both James.
You characterized yourself as a martyr and threatened the well-being of the prosecutor.
And Jennifer.
During your trial, you announced that you wouldn't do anything different.
You say you wouldn't do anything different. Well, that really says on what type of parents you are, because there's a lot of things I would do different. But the one thing I would have wanted to be different was to take that bullet that day so she could continue to live the life she deserved.
Jennifer Crumbley later attempting to clarify that comment.
With the benefit of hindsight and the information I have now, my answer would be drastically different.
Also telling the court she found God and trumpeting
the power of forgiveness. To forgive the prosecution for the slander and hate against me and my husband.
James Crumbley addressing the families.
I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did.
The speeches offering little comfort.
This tragedy has taken an incredible toll on our family.
Prosecutors arguing both parents ignored clear warning signs their son was violent and gave him easy access to a gun.
And after yesterday's sentencing hearing, defense attorneys for both parents declined to comment. Now, moving forward, state officials tell us all three members of the Crumbley family will be held in separate prisons. And in court documents, Jennifer Crumbley's attorney writes that she already plans to appeal.
All right.
Joe.
Maggie Vespa. Maggie, thank you so much.
Well, Nicole Bos, who you just heard there in Maggie's story, talk about losing her daughter Madison, as she was one of the family members who made an emotional impact statement during Tuesday's sentencing. She just spoke moments ago with the Today Show about the parents receiving the maximum sentence.
It was almost like a sense of relief. I played, that day over and over in my head. It's a constant reminder of, the events that I went through that day. And I wanted to let the parents know exactly how I felt that day. I feel like it sends a message to really listen to your children. There should be accountability for every action that we have. And the stance on, parents not being able to, see their children, or it's just more of like needs that they need. There's mental health resources out there. There is hotlines out there. There are so many things that they could push for. And I just feel like this gives an opening to parents as well to really make those changes in life and making sure that our children are taken care of. And it sends a message to parents all around, and even grandparents and any kind of guardian, that, children come first and they should be the priority.
Madison would have been a senior this year. Her mother says she had already started applying to colleges when she was killed.
Severe weather is sweeping across the South today. This morning, millions of Americans could be impacted by strong tornadoes, flooding, damaging winds, and hail. This comes after a night of storms that left many in Mississippi, Texas, and Louisiana without power. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with more. Kathy, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. That's right. From heavy downpours and damaging winds, it certainly has been a busy week of severe weather all across the South, and it's not over yet. Here in Louisiana, we're starting to feel the raindrops, but this is just a preview of what's to come. Stronger storms and the possibility of tornadoes in the forecast later today.
Overnight, strong storms moving across the southern U.S., lashing areas from Austin, Texas to western Louisiana with hail, heavy winds, and flooding. In parts of Mississippi, torrential rain and fierce winds sent trees smashing into semis, causing a serious backup on Interstate 20. Drivers also facing hazardous conditions, traveling on soaked streets of Shreveport, Louisiana. Fallen trees leaving some roads impassable. Heavy rain inundating roadways in the small town of Kingston, Louisiana, as hail battered the area around Austin, Texas.
The size of the hail was pretty intense, and obviously shattered the glass, damaged the car on the side.
Across the country, 4 million Americans under a tornado watch, and more than 100,000 in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi were left without power overnight. In central Arkansas, cleanup is now underway after a small town was devastated by a so-called microburst, packing 80 to 90 mile-per-hour winds Monday night, ripping off roofs and flipping over this mobile home.
Hopefully people, listen and pay attention to the surroundings around them, because you never know. And it's just that in the Lord's hands.
All this after an out-of-this-world eclipse on Monday, which caused a temperature drop between 5 and 10 degrees along the path of totality. Spectators admiring Mother Nature's majesty, now witnessing her fury.
And speaking of fury, and back here in Louisiana and places like Baton Rouge, where we are right now, later on today, we could see wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. And as the severe weather threat ramps up, a lot of schools in the area have decided to cancel classes for the day and go virtual. This also includes the LSU campus. Joe?
All right, Kathy, thank you.
Let's get more on all of this from meteorologist Angie Lastman.
She is tracking the storm's path for us this morning. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And where Kathy is right now, we're going to see that those conditions continue to deteriorate as the morning goes on. But we've already seen those really strong storms working across parts of Texas into Louisiana. And that line of storms is going to continue to make its way to the north and east here as the day goes on. Notice what you see in that bright pink. That's a tornado watch that's going to be in effect for another couple of hours. We've got thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings in effect across specifically Louisiana at this time as those strong storms continue to develop. That's going to be something we watch through the day today. We're also concerned about the flooding. We've seen upwards of 6 to 7 inches of total rain already accumulated in places across Texas. So this line of storms has plenty of moisture to tap into. Those rainfall rates will likely be impressive, somewhere around 2 to 3 inches per hour. So the flooding concern will be there. 13 million people under the flood watch. But we've got, of course, a flash flood warning in effect for places like Jackson down to Alexandria as we gear up for more of that impressive rain to work through the area in the next couple of hours. The severe threat today is expansive. It does include specifically parts along the Gulf Coast for the best chance to see some of those stronger and even severe storms. We're talking about tornadoes, of course. The wind gusts, you heard Kathy mention 70, 75 mile per hour wind gusts will be possible. And we can't rule out that hail that we'll be watching through the afternoon hours as well. But specifically for the tornadoes, if you live anywhere from Lake Charles up to Meridian and out towards the Florida Panhandle, east of Pensacola even, that's where you're going to have the best chance to see some of those stronger tornadoes. That means EF2 or higher. And this is something we're watching not just for this afternoon, but remember, I told you that tornado watch is already in effect. So this morning into the afternoon, a good chance to see that along the Gulf Coast. By tomorrow, it'll clear that region, but we'll start to see this system work to the north and east, and that means heavy rain on tap for your plans as you get into the day tomorrow across parts of the Ohio Valley. We've got the Great Lakes dealing with some of that heavy rain out towards the northeast. In parts of New England, we'll see some of that rain, and along the mid-Atlantic, specifically the Carolinas, we'll see some impressive rainfall too. The severe threat won't diminish tomorrow. It'll be less, but not quite as robust as what we're seeing today, but it'll still be there with wind gusts, the most likely impact that you'll see up to 60 miles per hour and a couple tornadoes not out of the question. Cincinnati to Pittsburgh and Savannah to Tampa. Those are the spots that will look for the best chance of that as we get through our day tomorrow. But this really potent storm system is going to cause some problems between now and then. The one positive across that region, temperatures are warm. If you were out and about in places across the Northeast yesterday, you noticed how spring-like it was. We've got temperatures into the mid-70s today on tap for Washington, D.C. We've got Raleigh headed to the upper 70s, 66 degrees for Chicago today. So we're running way warm for this time of year. Minneapolis really sticks out to me. 17 degrees above normal for this time of year, and they're going to head into those low 70s.
That's not just shorts weather. That could be like sleeveless, like
we're laying in the sun.
People are tanning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
And our resident Minnesotan. We've got much more to come on this hour of morning news now, including some major travel headaches that could unfortunately be on the itinerary of Americans looking to get away this summer.
But first, new developments in the case of the 6-year-old Virginia boy who shot his teacher. Why that school's former assistant principal is now being indicted in relation to the shooting. Stay with us. That's next. We're back now with an update on a story we have been following. A surprising development after a 6-year-old boy shot his teacher at a Virginia elementary school last year. Now, a special grand jury has voted to indict the school's former assistant principal with multiple felony counts. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has more on that. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That's right. According to court documents that have just been unsealed, Ebony Parker, the former assistant principal of Rich Neck Elementary, has been indicted on 8 counts of felony child abuse. If convicted, she could spend 40 years behind bars.
It's believed to be the first case of its kind in the country. According to court documents, a special grand jury in Newport News, Virginia, has indicted Dr. Ebony Parker, the former assistant principal at Rich Neck Elementary School, on 8 counts of felony child abuse. The charges stemming from the 2023 school shooting involving a 6-year-old boy who opened fire on his teacher, Abigail Zwerner. Savannah interviewed Zwerner last year.
Will never forget the look on his face that he gave me while he pointed the gun directly at me. That's something that I will never forget. It's changed me. It's changed my life.
In a $40 million civil lawsuit, Zwerner alleges that on the day of the shooting, Parker was warned at least 3 times that the child had a gun. And while the child's backpack was searched and no weapon found, Zwerner's lawyers allege Parker ignored the warnings.
A student out in the playground saw the boy take the gun out of his pocket. That student went to a teacher and said, "I saw him with a gun." That teacher ran down to the assistant principal's office and said, I now have a student who has seen the gun. And that teacher requested permission to search his person. And the assistant principal said, no.
What should Dr. Parker have done?
She should have called the police after multiple warnings that a child may have a gun.
NBC News' attempts to reach Dr. Parker and the school for comment were unsuccessful. Experts say this indictment is not only unprecedented, but represents a potential change in who can be held legally responsible in school shootings.
Cases like these are about sending a very clear message that school shootings are so horrible, we're willing to depart from the traditional rules and hold people responsible that really historically have not been held responsible before.
How do you even make sense of something like this?
You can't. You can't. I'm not sure when the shock will ever go away because of just how surreal it was.
Now, more indictments in this case are possible after a prosecutor tasked a grand jury to look at any, quote, acts or omissions by school officials, that grand jury convening last year. Meanwhile, the boy's mother has been sentenced to 2 years in prison on a state felony child neglect charge. The boy is currently being cared for by his great-grandfather, telling our NBC affiliate that the boy has switched schools, his grades have improved, and he realizes that what he did was a terrible mistake. Joe.
All right, Erin McLaughlin, thank you so much. Let's talk more about this with NBC News legal analyst Angela Senadella. So first of all, we have to remind folks this is an indictment. There's a difference between an indictment and a conviction. So let's start with the indictment. What does it take? What kind of evidence is needed to get a grand jury to say, yeah, let's move forward with this?
So the biggest difference with an indictment is that the defense doesn't present anything. The defendant's not in the room. And also a lot of the evidence that might not be considered in the trial can be brought up in this indictment process. Now, here we found 8 charges of felony child neglect, and the standard there was a reckless disregard for human life. And this disregards the other kids in the classroom, alleging that this administrator put them in harm's way when she was responsible for their safety, given that they're under 18, they were in an elementary school, and these children were put in harm's way because of things she did not do. So in a case like this, where it's not about abuse, where she did things, but actually what she did not do, there has to be a pattern that was proven. And we don't know the evidence that was in this indictment process, but we can gather ideas from what was in this lawsuit that NBC discussed. And the lawsuit claims that she multiple times just disregarded employees coming to her and telling her that there could be a gun in this classroom.
So looking ahead, obviously prosecutors will want a conviction here. How tough of a case is this going to be? What are they going to need to prove?
So the biggest difference is that this has never been done before. There's never been an administrator who, based on neglect, has been charged in a shooting like this. But this is so extraordinary because the children are so young. 6-year-olds can't even be left home by themselves. So in an elementary school setting like this, the responsibility, the obligation for an administrator is very high. And here, if the prosecutors can prove there is a pattern that multiple times different employees came to her and said, please look at this situation, search his bag, this child is possibly a danger on that day when there was a gun, then if they can prove that it was foreseeable, it's possible they could get a conviction.
At the top of the hour, we talked about the Crumbleys, the parents who were held criminally responsible for their child's school shooting. Now we have this case, and it feels like, I don't know, there's like 20, 25 years of maybe pent-up frustration all across this country about mass shootings and wanting to hold more people responsible. This case, what kind of precedent could it set moving forward when it comes to mass shootings?
You're exactly right. The Crumbley parents being charged was something very new. In this case, this is also something very new. And if an administrator is found guilty, then it's possible across the country prosecutors could be looking again in school shooting cases to charge administrators, to charge the teachers in the classroom. Up until this point, the school administrators have generally been protected almost as victims themselves. But now it's possible that prosecutors will look at them as perpetrators.
And of course, in some cases, we've seen administrators and teachers who've been absolute heroes in these situations to save the lives of their children.
Of course, this is extraordinary. I don't want to say this is normal.
Exactly. Angela Sandell, appreciate your expertise as always. Thank you so much. Well, spring has just only sprung. Summer is around the corner. Vacation travel is already expected to reach or even surpass pre-pandemic levels this year. Some vacationers are already finding plenty of challenges, especially when it comes to booking flights and hotels for the warm weather months ahead. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from Miami International Airport with what you can expect and how to plan your next trip. Sam, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Yeah, allergies still a concern, but so is the logistical crunch around traveling this summer. What we've already seen, Joe, in the first few months of the year so far, numbers for January, February, and March that have soared past pre-pandemic levels. The TSA right now forecasting record figures for the rest of the year. And the issue is that there is increased oversight, as we know, on Boeing right now, a cap in their production, which could have a serious toll on travelers.
Surf, sand, and sunscreen are on the minds of many Americans planning a summer trip. Projections are calling for an eye-popping 4.7 billion people to travel across the globe in 2024, likely breaking an all-time record.
Are we finally going to see the numbers exceed what happened before the pandemic struck?
2023 was really our test case of, are we sort of back to normal? You know, travel is definitely back, and it is significantly more so than we saw pre-pandemic.
Here in the U.S., nearly all Americans plan to take a trip this year, with half reporting they'll travel internationally. That includes Aaliyah Hill, who's already booked a trip to Barcelona with her grandmother and also has eyes on New Orleans and Chicago if prices cooperate.
You may need multiple jobs or even like a side hustle to afford flights, hotels, food when you get there. Everything does add up.
While the travel deal website Going.com reports plane tickets are still down substantially from their peak in mid-2022, the logistical turbulence is real. Airlines are wary of the potential long-term impact of Boeing's door plug blowout, with the federal government taking an increased role overseeing quality control. Boeing announcing Tuesday its airplane deliveries dropping to just 83 in the first 3 months of this year, roughly half what it was in the prior quarter. The move trickling down to some U.S. carriers that mainly use Boeing planes. Last month, Southwest Airlines said it will have to cut capacity plans. United has paused hiring pilots, and Alaska Air says its scheduling is in flux, all citing Boeing delays. Though Going.com says there's reason for optimism.
We actually have more flights on the schedule as well as more seats available. So this is actually a good thing and good news for travelers.
Those like Aaliyah Hill, who are hoping for affordable flights, might consider other options in the meantime, like traveling by train or bus.
So do I sacrifice a whole day worth of travel so that I'm not working, but I'm saving money on a ticket? Or do I just cut my losses and buy the more expensive ticket, but then I'm able to work in between time?
All right, Joe, if you do want to fly, let's get right to the heart of the matter and tips. When should I be booking my tickets during this peak summer season? For domestic flights, experts say it's 3 to 7 months in advance. For international flights, 4 to 8 months. Now, yes, that's a long time. Here's the cheat code. The first couple of weeks in June and the last 2 in August are a little less congested. You might find better value there. And the Greek islands trick, I like this idea. Just get to Europe, find the cheapest flight you can to some major city, and then take a train or another flight once you're there. Experts say that is cheaper, but this is not for the faint of heart. Joe, back to you.
All right, you got to know your stuff. Sam, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now to what's making headlines around the world this morning, starting with catastrophic flooding in Russia and Kazakhstan. NBC News International correspondent Claudio Labonga joins us from Rome with that and other world news. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Joel. That's right. More than 100,000 people were ordered to evacuate across Russia and Kazakhstan as rivers there have been quickly swelling beyond bursting point as the snow is melting fast. Now, local officials in Siberia and Kazakhstan said rivers, including the Ural, Europe's third longest river, had risen by yards in a matter of hours to the highest levels ever recorded, causing the worst flooding in the area for at least 70 years. The Kremlin said Vladimir Putin was getting been updated on the situation but had no immediate plans to visit the flood zone. Let's go to South Korea, where citizens are heading to the polls to vote for a new parliament. The vote is seen as a midterm referendum on President Yoon Suk-yeol, whose approval rating has been falling for months. Since he was elected in 2022, the president has battled a series of political scandals and has been under pressure from a number of issues, including an ongoing doctor's strike, rising food prices, and a rapidly aging population. He's also been criticized for appearing to be out of touch with voters' inflation worries. If his People Power Party fails to secure a strong representation, Yeol may be forced to resign. And let's end this tour of the world with 18 new global geoparks. The new geological sites announced by UNESCO highlight a particular region's natural, cultural, and intangible heritage. Among them are the Brazilian city of Uberaba, where 10,000 fossils of dinosaurs were found, the soaring monasteries of Meteora in Greece, the South Fin archipelago, sometimes called the Garden of Denmark, and Longyang in China, known for its distinctive roundhouse-style buildings, compact cobblestone streets, and the country's Hakka culture. Well, home to the country's Hakka culture. Back to you, Joe.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much. Coming up, forgive the cheesy pun, but this spring allergy season is really shaping up to be something to sneeze at. After the break, we've got some tips on how you can survive all the pollen, the grass, the ragweed, or whatever else ails you as temperatures heat up. The doctor is in next. Welcome back. Spring has officially sprung, but for many Americans, that means so have their allergies. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America says about 26% of adults and 19% of children have been diagnosed with seasonal allergies. So if you're one of the people experiencing an uptick in stuffy noses and scratchy throats, you're not alone. Today, we're going to break down the top tips to help you survive those seasonal allergies. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now. Dr. Patel, good morning. So, study in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found between 1990 and 2018, pollen seasons lengthened and pollen concentrations increased across North America. So how do these longer pollen seasons impact our seasonal allergies? And what role do we think climate change is playing in all this?
Yeah, Joe, climate change is a huge part of it. We're seeing that as the globe has been warming, so have all the flowers, and you might have noticed that things are blooming a lot earlier and staying in bloom, or trees are staying kind of in cycle a lot longer than normal. That is creating a lot longer pollen season, up to as high as an extra month in many parts, especially as you head north in America. And this is adding up to not just seasonal allergies, but pretty much possibility of allergies all year round.
I know, like, even just 3 weeks ago, it seemed like anecdotally I was hearing more people complain about their allergies. So people who, how early can people start experiencing the seasonal allergies, and in what ways are their symptoms maybe different from cold?
Yeah, so you're right. The overlap between cold and allergy symptoms is pretty high, but most people with allergies, if they haven't had them diagnosed, they usually just have this kind of chronic stuffy nose. Itchy eyes are a feature, especially in children. And then some people I've had patients that have just said that they're more tired than usual and they just can't explain it. Now, of course, we look for other sources, but Joe, many times it's allergies. And I'm seeing this as early as January, February, depending on where you are in the country. So it's not just a summertime thing, because spring is kind of getting bumped up in many parts of the country as we get warmer.
We certainly saw that during March last month in a lot of parts of the country. So obviously we can't control nature. we can't reduce the pollen count outside. So what are some of the things we can do to try and make things a little more tolerable when it comes to our allergies?
All right. This is where I've got all sorts of tools of the trade over many years of trying to take care of allergies, including in my own house. All right, couple of things. Look and monitor pollen counts, because you can try to manage when you're outdoors, and you can go to pollen.com and look at the pollen counts in your area and try to avoid peak pollen times. Joe, that's early morning and late afternoons. And I know that's terrible. We want people to be outdoors, but try to stay indoors with windows closed during those times. Get a HEPA filter on your air condition if you can. That can help reduce pollen, or even a local kind of air purifier in the room that you spend the most time in to reduce pollen. Then here's another trick. We carry that pollen in our hair, in our clothes, what we're wearing. I tell people with seasonal allergies, come home, take a shower, make sure you wash your hair, change your clothes, and then make sure you change your pillowcases too. You sleep on them, you shake out pollen. that can recapture everything and irritate some things at night. Then we get to the toolbox of like medications over the counter. Talk to your provider because you may need to have some guidance in how you take over the counter medications. I sometimes have my patients take their over the counter allergy medications at night so that we can make sure that they are rested, that they don't have as much of that irritation. And usually with 24-hour medications, have that protection early in the morning when I said there's peak pollen time. In addition to that, I think it's just doing everything possible to minimize exposure. And then there's other tricks that you're going to hear about and see on social media, neti pot, things like that. Use that with caution. You really need to kind of know what you're doing, but they can be helpful.
Very good. I like the point about the pillowcases because it's in our hair, then it's on our pillowcase, then it's in our face all night long. So good points. Dr. Patel, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, having your back after the break, a brand new feature on Uber that's being rolled out this morning with the safety of women in particular in mind. Savannah is going to bring us that story next. We are back with some breaking economic data. Inflation rose by 0.4% in March on the monthly basis. It's the same as the February figure, but here's the key. Year over year, inflation rose by 3.5%, more than expected, more than we saw last month. Here to discuss the report is Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver. Yikes. What's your reaction to this, and break down some of the categories where we're seeing these higher than expected numbers?
Yeah, inflation is still out of the Fed's control right now. We see higher prices month after month for gas, energy, and shelter prices and food prices. If you strip out food and energy, I don't know why you would, because we have to pay for them every single day, you have a 3.8% inflation rate, much higher than the Fed's target. Remember, the Fed would like this closer to 2%. We have been stuck above 3%. And if you look at the trend, and this is what we care about, is this a blip or is this a trend going on for the past several months? It's a trend. Inflation is creeping higher, not lower. That's going to impact the Fed's decision to lower rates. They may not lower rates at all this year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, this is not what the Fed wants to see. We were thinking, what, maybe June we could start to see rates go down. Realistically, what could this mean now? What should people prepare for?
People should prepare for the fact that prices are going to be high for a while, and those interest rates that the Fed has kept at a 14-year high, they're going to remain high, too. That means higher APRs on your credit cards. That means higher mortgage rates, which means the housing market's going to be stuck some more. That means higher interest on everything you're borrowing money for. Money's tight right now. That said, we're spending. We say that the cure for high prices is high prices. Eventually, consumers tap out. They're not tapping out. You just ran a piece about airline fares and people willing to pay them this summer. Consumers continue to spend themselves in debt, but they should readjust for the fact that high prices and high interest rates are here for a while.
So it should people, I mean, is that the bottom line here? People should just understand this is the way things are now, and it might be this way for a while?
Yeah, this is the adjustment you need to make for your household, for yourself, for your small business, because prices are not going down. We're not having deflation. We're only having it in certain areas like used cars and trucks. But everything else, especially energy prices, are getting more expensive. Just gasoline, which is the one that everybody has to deal with, that is $3.60 a gallon right now. It was $3.40 a month ago. Yeah. That is driving prices higher. Higher fuel prices and energy prices just makes everything more expensive. Look at commodities like sugar, look at cocoa, look at copper. Everything's more expensive.
To be clear, the Fed is not going to raise rates anymore, right? No. That's highly unlikely, but they're probably going to stay where they are. Yeah. What is the impact for the average consumer then if you are looking? There are a lot of folks who are probably thinking, okay, this summer, this fall, that's when we're going to buy a house because things are going to drop. What's the message to those people?
The message is you might have to wait a little while longer, even though there's a lot of pent-up demand, but mortgage rates are still north of 7%. That just keeps the housing market in a deep freeze. If you're borrowing money and you owe interest, got to pay that high-interest credit card down right now because rates are not coming down anytime soon.
And maybe if you just, do you think a lot of people are just going to say, okay, I'm going to buy the house anyway, I'm not waiting anymore because folks have money to spend and that's the deal?
People that need a house and have been waiting for a long time and have the down payment are going to do it. You're going to see a lot of cash buyers in the market right now. You're going to see some movement, but the general uptrend in the housing market, we're probably going to have to wait till midsummer or fall for that.
All right, Caleb Silver breaking it down. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's get some other financial headlines this morning. Sending mail about to get a little pricier. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us more with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, inflation hitting the U.S. Postal Service, right? So the U.S. Postal Service is looking to raise the price of stamps again. If approved, the cost of a first-class stamp will go from 68 to 73 cents in July. The Postal Service says the increase is necessary due to rising costs for processing and delivering mail. Similar increases would also go into effect for postcards, metered letters, and international mail. The agency is also seeking hikes for money orders and certified mail. Gold is turning into gold for Costco. Wells Fargo estimates the retailer may be selling as much as $200 million in gold bars a month. Costco is selling 1 ounce bars made of nearly pure 24-karat gold. Now, while the price isn't disclosed to non-members, it's believed the bars sell for about 2% above the market price, which is at a record high, near $2,400 an ounce. Gold prices have jumped more than 14% this year. And get this, Krispy Kreme has moved on from its solar eclipse promotion to the next sweet treat. It's teaming up with Kit Kat on 3 new donuts, which you can get starting today for a limited time. They include an unglazed donut filled with cookie dough flavored cream, dipped in milk chocolate icing, and covered with Kit Kat pieces and chocolate chips. Another is an original glazed donut topped with brownie batter buttercream, covered with Kit Kat and brownie pieces. You can also find them in select grocery stores, including Walmart and Kroger, Joe. Wow.
Just throw a candy bar on the donut.
Just I feel like you would love that.
Would
you want to try that? Sounds so good.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I would try that. I had actually the best donut I think I've ever had in Philadelphia this last week. It was amazing. It was an apple donut. It was
so that sounds delicious. But this with Kit Kat,
like an apple cider
I'm in for Kit Kat. It's good.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks,
Love it. Well, now let's get to an NBC News exclusive this morning. Uber is rolling out new and improved safety features. I got a first-hand look at the rideshare company's new automatic in-app safety features developed with female riders in mind.
Concerns about safety when using rideshare apps on the minds of women.
Something weird happened the other day while I was waiting on my Uber.
And he started using full-on slurs, and I was like, okay, no, I feel deeply, deeply unsafe.
This morning, Uber rolling out a new feature, the ability to automatically activate selected safety preferences based on time or location. Think late night trips, rides within 50 meters of a bar or restaurant, your weekend pickups, or if you'd like, for every ride.
We're hoping that these features gives them peace of mind so they don't have to think about it in the moment.
Emily Bowman is the company's director of global safety public policy.
What do you think it's going to mean for people that this can go on automatically? They've had a couple drinks. How much of a difference could that make for someone?
It allows riders to set it and forget it, then not have to worry about it when they're out moving around town.
Riders will be able to opt into Share My Trip, which allows you to send your GPS location to a friend or family member. PIN verification ensures you get in the right car. Ride Check prompts Uber to check in if your trip veers off course. And audio recording, which can be created and encrypted for the entirety of your ride.
Was this built with women in mind?
We got a lot of feedback from all riders that they wanted this type of choice, but it's also something we heard specifically from women riders that they really wanted this type of optionality in-app.
Just last year, competing rideshare app Lyft introduced female-focused safety features. Uber's own most recent safety data cited more than 3,800 reports of sexual assault and misconduct from riders and drivers.
Here's how this works. You open up your Uber app, then navigate to Account, Settings, and scroll down to Safety Preferences. Once you're here, you can choose which features you're interested in. And then here's what's new. You can determine when exactly you want those features to kick in, automatically now between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m., or within 50 meters of a bar and restaurant. So now let's test it out. I'm going to order a ride. Since I'm leaving a bar, my safety preferences will kick in automatically. My producer, Christine, has already received a notification that I'm sharing my trip status with her. And as I get into my Uber, I'm going to check with my driver that he can use my PIN to get this ride started. Hi, are you
Savannah.
Nate? Hi,
Yes.
Nate. Can I give you my PIN?
Oh, sure. Hold on one sec.
Okay, my PIN is 4108.
4108. There it is.
There we go. So let me buckle up now that you've got my PIN. I can see right here audio recording has kicked in. So should something go wrong, the audio of this would be able to be reviewed by Uber. We also have the preference Ride Check engaged right now. So should we go off course or should we stop for an extended period of time, the app would ask me if everything's okay. So Nate, as a driver, do these features make you feel safer?
Actually, they do. It's mostly because when the passenger is comfortable, I'm a little bit more comfortable.
So a couple more details on that PIN verification system being one of these safety features. So the driver is not able to start the ride until they enter the correct number in the app. That's why you give it to the driver and not vice versa, which I know could be a little counterintuitive. But the idea here is to make women have those choices and make it safer, especially, you know, at night, maybe after a couple drinks.
Exactly, and if you're going home by yourself, too. Exactly. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you got it. Coming up, it was a cosmic sensation viewed across the nation, but one question remains this morning. Who took the best picture?
After the break, we're going to show you the most jaw-dropping pics from the amateurs to the pros of Monday's total solar eclipse. But which shot is the cream of the crop? We're going to let you decide. That's next.
Let's get out of here.
Warm up your French accents. That is just a little sneak peek of Warner Brothers' first trailer for Joker, Folie à Deux. It is the sequel to the 2019 box office smash, which made history as the first R-rated film to gross more than $1 billion globally. Joaquin Phoenix returns to the big screen with that sinister red lip, but this time he's discovering his softer side, quite literally falling madly for his famous love interest, Harley Quinn, who will be played by Lady Gaga. You can catch all the romantic chaos in theaters this October. I can't wait to hear everyone mispronounce the name of the movie. It's going to be fun.
There you go. Love it. Excited for that. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
We end this hour with another glimpse of this week's incredible total eclipse. The celestial spectacle is likely one of the most photographed events of the year. But who got the best shot of all? NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz shows us some of the best.
It's hard to say who shot it best. So many angles, so many perspectives, so many people capturing this historic moment. Photographers, some with iPhones, others with professional long lenses, spread out along the path of totality to capture the magic of the solar eclipse.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow. One of the most breathtaking frames, this one of a plane on the edge of the sun's glow. The mesmerizing moment taken by 25-year-old Kendall Rust, an amateur photographer from Memphis who traveled to Jonesboro, Arkansas, never expecting to get the shot of a lifetime.
When I got it, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I've taken everything I need to take. This is the one.
Her image going viral.
I've had comments from all the way from France to the UK. I had no idea it was going to reach this amount of people.
The photo, just one example of the beauty of this natural wonder and the shared experience of looking up, even from the sky. And space, that's the moon's shadow over North America.
How cool is it to know that you're there capturing the same eclipse as so many thousands of other people?
It's amazing. Just to be a part of that experience has been really incredible.
One eclipse, millions of unique perspectives, an extraordinary astronomical event lasting moments, but forever captured in these images. Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
We're going to have to savor those images for 20 years until the next one.
I'm going to throw another one in for the potential prize here. Our floor manager, Julie, and her boyfriend, Camden, took the most incredible time-lapse of it. It was just amazing. So, so cool to see.
Awesome photos. I was in Philadelphia. I saw clouds, which was also
We're sorry about that. I didn't get totality, but everybody here saw me screaming and freaking out over just the 89%. It was very cool. So
whatever you could see,
sorry you missed it. You got WrestleMania.
There you go. That's exactly it. It was a different type of eclipse. That'll do it for this hour of morning
celestial
news.
Event, if you will. The news continues right now. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.